Hey everybody, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Probably welcome. I'm Kelsey. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have my own practice. It's called Kelsey Chismar Therapy LLC. Usually my cats join for the videos. You know what's funny? Since my channel is so new at this point, we're in the future OG days. Like whenever my channel hopefully gets a bit bigger and over the years, we can eventually look back on this time of like, oh, these are the folks that were around in the early days of my channel. So thank you for being here. Today I wanted to chit chat with you about a topic that has been tough for me to navigate pretty much my entire adult life, actually half my life at this point. I started working when I was 16 and I'm 32 now. I'm late diagnosed autistic, ADHD, and one of the biggest struggles that I've had with this journey is working. And honestly, working in any capacity. I don't see this talked about on the internet as often as I would like, so I wanted to make a long video talking about it and talking about my personal journey. I'm one neurodivergent person. Everybody is different. Every neurodivergent person experiences the world differently and all of that. So I'm only speaking from my own experience and my own struggles. And a few disclaimers before we get started. I really like to pause and reflect and think about what I'm going to say ahead of time, which makes me quite a slow speaker, which I know that in the TikTok days, like just kind of where we are right now, I know that that can be tricky for our attention span and just engagement. But I feel like, I mean, if we're on our phones at least an hour or two a day of just like scrolling and we have all these 15-second blips or even shorter, like for videos, I don't know. I feel like that's just really overstimulating and not so great for our brain. So maybe if we can, I don't know, have this feel like a real life conversation, feel like we're actually talking with each other and not have so many like to make this just faster. Like if you need me to talk faster, isn't there a setting that you can do twice the speed or something like that? Maybe you can do that. Do what you need to do. So I want this to feel like a naturally flowing conversation as much as possible. Side note, as an autistic person, I would say that social and communication skills are probably the hardest also to deal with. I feel like there's a lot going on up here, but it's not always the easiest for me to articulate. So sometimes you might see me cut to like rephrase something a couple different times. So that way it makes the most sense. And it's better articulating like what I'm trying to say. So I struggle with communication skills. I struggle with social skills. We can talk more about that in another video. So today I want to talk about my experience with working. So I think it's important to have the context and like the build up before I start talking about these things. So I want this to be a safe space for us neurodivergent folks or anybody honestly who struggles with working. So that way you can feel understood, heard, accepted, supported in that struggle, because I know how much shame and guilt and frustration and like comparison can come from that whenever you see everybody essentially around you working a lot more hours than you can handle while also having a social life or like keeping up with just life things in general. I know that that can be really hard. So if you're, I don't mean to like exclude anybody specifically, but I feel like if you're one of those people who thinks it's lazy to not work as much as the next person, or you think that maybe us autistic people are faking or not trying hard enough or any of these things, maybe you're attributing those to like character defects, this content isn't for you, and that's okay. Not all content is for everybody. This is a really hard thing for me to articulate because I haven't talked to anybody at length about this, so I might be kind of all over the place. See, I keep pausing for like 15 seconds to like think things through of how I want to say it the best way possible. So I'm definitely going to be making cuts, sorry. But I want it to feel as conversation as possible. I'm very new to this YouTube world, by the way. So my work journey started at 16 when I worked at a grocery store for a few months. I got fired, but so did a good like 20 other people. I think they just wanted to start over new with the staff, but anyway, I found that job particularly soul-sucking. But at the time, I didn't think a whole lot of it. I think it was like, okay, this just isn't the job for me. I'm not happy doing this anyway. I didn't realize how overstimulating that environment was for me. The bright lights, the busyness, the constant social small talk, just all of that wasn't for me. and standing and being uncomfortable, working long hours, just doing kind of the same tasks. And that's not at all to put down grocery workers or anything like that, not at all. It's just that wasn't a good fit for me. But honestly, most jobs aren't a good fit for me. So then I started working at a car dealership, and I would stay in one position for maybe upwards of a year. But again, I would get cold feet really quickly and kind of jump job to job within the car dealership. So I did so many different things there. Maybe it was more like 6 months actually, based on the timeline of how long I was there. But I'd start out in one area. I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. I would eventually get cold feet and like freak out and move to a different department. Because again, at the time, I didn't realize why I was struggling so hard with each position. I thought that it was more of maybe a job thing. I think I just kept trying to find a good fit for me, but I kept not finding that. And so eventually I decided to just go back to college because I was like, maybe I just haven't found what I'm interested in or what I'm passionate about. Because maybe if I'm doing something that I'm really interested in, maybe this won't be such a struggle for me. So I abruptly stopped that job and I went back to school full time. I tried nursing. Again, that wasn't a good fit for me. And honestly, I tried pretty much every major that was offered at every college that I went to. And nothing seemed to be a good fit until I finally found psychology. And I thought that that was going to be like the end all be all, that this was just going to be I thought that that was going to be the answer. So I started going to college for become a therapist and had my mind set on that. And I thought that that was going to be kind of the end all be all, that like once I was working in the field, doing something that I'm passionate about, excited about, interested in, then I'm not going to have trouble working anymore, right? Well, so I worked at several other jobs while I was in college, super part-time, usually about 2 days a week is what I could handle. I felt like I could handle about 2 days a week. That felt like maybe what other people's capacity would be like as full-time. It felt like 2 days a week is about as much as I could handle because once I would go to about 3 days a week, it felt like my life would eventually become unmanageable pretty quickly, actually. And I would find that I couldn't balance everything else going on in my life. I couldn't balance parenting, exercise, social obligations, and just like keeping up with the house and just keeping up with life in general once I hit about 3 days a week. So I guess you could say like 10 to 15 hours a week seemed to be about the max. Like once I would push up to about 20 hours a week, no matter what the job was, it seemed like that was about my max, and that I would have this, I don't know how to describe this feeling, but if you've lived it, you understand it. It, not to sound dramatic, but it honestly felt just like soul crushing. I don't know. I think that for me, maybe because I'm so high masking, I hate to even say this, it kind of makes me sad to like verbalize it, but I guess I'm trying to hide my autistic traits as much as possible. Like whenever you're in a professional environment, you have to be so on mentally and physically too, that I think that having to hide so much of who I am and how I'm wired really just takes everything out of me. And I think so much of things that maybe other people don't think about, like let's say I'm working in person somewhere. The whole like first off, everything takes energy from me, like everything is work, even just day-to-day things that you don't think of. And so I think breaking it down of the whole like having to pre-plan like what time am I going to wake up, getting ready, like showering, getting ready, doing my hair, doing my makeup, packing however many meals I need for the day, like however long the day is. If it's a 12-hour day, I need like multiple meals, snacks, enough water, and then getting my kids ready, getting my kids off to childcare, whoever is taking them that day, having to remember all the things that they need for the day, and then getting them all packed up and in the car, and make sure I let my dog out, feed my animals. All these things that maybe are autopilot for other people actually take a lot of thought and a lot of intention for me. I can't multitask. Usually if I start multitasking, I'll drop something, I'll break something, I'll do something kind of seems like forgetful or scatterbrained or absent-minded, where I can't multitask. I can do one task pretty well, but I can't do multiple at the same time. And so all of those things stacking up takes a lot of energy out of me. And so then driving into work, usually I'd have a pretty long commute on the highway, and that takes a lot of attention too, especially during rush hour. So then I've already done a couple hours worth of like hard things. And then I'm going to go work a 8, 10, 12 hour shift, because a lot of times the way that I kind of coped was I'd rather, like, when I'm in work mode, I just want to work. I have a hard time with transitions. And so it seemed like if I worked a 12-hour shift, I got it all done in one day. And like my whole purpose for that day was just to work. And so I struggle with transitions. So transitioning from mom mode to like working out to working, like all those different transitions are pretty hard for me. And so I figured if I can have just like one thing that I'm doing that day, which is working, but it would also take a ton out of me because like it's a 12-hour day. And so again, I get into work and then I start getting ready for the day. And you figure a lot of these environments aren't necessarily neurodivergent friendly in a lot of ways. And I'm only speaking for myself. Everybody's different and what kinds of things are hard for them and overstimulating and all that. But for me personally, being in an office setting, having the bright overhead lights, it wasn't uncommon for me to get migraines because I would forget to eat because I was so hyper focused on doing the tasks and doing them correctly. Because, like, again, this stuff is really hard for me that I'd forget to eat. And again, with the overhead lights and everything, I would get migraines pretty often, which again would kind of put me out. And so working with a whole team was hard because there were constant interruptions. Like, I loved my coworkers everywhere I worked, but always like having interruptions and like having meetings and having to be on. And even like if you get an unpaid lunch break, you still kind of had to socialize unless you went out or something like that. And so I didn't want to be rude and not socialize with everybody. Like, I needed time to just not be on because that takes so much mental energy from me, right? And so then too, being professional, that's a whole nother mask that we all have to put on, but it's just extra hard, I think, for us, or at least for me as an autistic person, and not being able to like take care of my needs when I needed to. Like, at my last job, we had to run 3-hour therapy groups. And towards the end of my time there, you weren't allowed to take a break at all, like patients or staff. So you had to go 3 hours without going to the bathroom or eating or drinking, anything like that. And again, that's a long time for me to be on, like, especially monitoring all the different personalities in a group and being an effective therapist and group leader and all of that is just a lot. So I think I got a bit sidetracked. I know I was talking about like my time in college and all these kind of haphazard jobs, like all over the place that I took. And like I tried so many different fields and kept kind of falling on my face with, like, I'd be okay for the first few months or so. It felt okay as long as I was doing about 2 days a week. And then after that, I don't know, I just started to like fall apart and it felt like I would get like this cold feet, I guess, feeling like I needed to get out of there. And I don't know, just starting to struggle with everything. And I can't quite describe the feeling. It's almost like this all encompassing, like soul sucking. I don't know. It just takes everything out of me. And then plus two, I'm not somebody who processes things in real time. I very much need to like kind of sit in quiet to like think everything through, whether that's like on a quiet drive or like just literally sitting and staring at the wall. I have to like process everything. And so the way that my brain works too, the way this was explained to me by a psychiatrist who specializes in ADHD and autism is, so for me, the busier I am, the more overstimulated I am, and it doesn't tire me out at the end of the day. It actually wires me. And so the busier I am, the harder it is for me to fall asleep because I'm processing everything. Like, my brain won't let me fall asleep until everything from the day is processed. And I'm just so like, I don't know, my mind's racing. It's just buzzing with everything that I did that day. And so I've noticed, me personally, the less I have going on, the less busy I am, the slower, simple life like that I can have as possible, if that makes sense. The better that my brain does, the better I sleep. Everything is just better overall. And I know that that's not quite, I don't know, accessible as much as I would like it. And I feel like a lot of us too, that's a hard balance to have, I think. And so this whole time, the common theme was like, I don't understand why everybody else can work so much more than me and still balance everything outside of work. And just like, I don't know, it just seems like everybody else can do this. Why can't I? Now, mind you, I didn't get diagnosed until a couple years ago. So most of my adult life, No, since I was 16. I keep saying most of my adult life, but, like, ever since I was 16, I've been working. I'm in my 30s now, and it has never gone well, no matter what job I've had, and the thing is, like, you take yourself wherever you go, so I do acknowledge that, like, this is a me thing, but I also think that, like, I don't think I'm allowed to say that on here. Panini? The panini that started in 2020, I think had an impact on, like, I don't wanna speak for everybody else, of course, but it just seems like so many jobs have, like, gotten more strict and, like, wanting more productivity out of you for, like, the same, if not less. Just seems like benefits are getting worse and worse, and, like, raises are getting less and less, but, like, they're expecting more out of you. That was hard too, because in my last job, so I was a drug and alcohol therapist for 6 years, and then there was a, I don't know, 6 to 9 month period in between that I went to a group practice, and those jobs were not neurodivergent friendly whatsoever. At the time, nobody knew that I was neurodivergent. I knew I had raging ADHD, but I didn't realize that autism was actually the one that was impacting me the most. And so once I got my diagnosis in 2023, I went to my boss at the time, which, like, at that particular branch that I was a therapist at, it was pretty close knit. Like, we all got along pretty well. I really liked my coworkers. And once I was diagnosed, I went to them of like, you know, I could use some accommodations. This is really hard for me. And I know that that was hard for them to understand because, like, from their perspective, they're like, well, you've done your job this certain way for the last how many years? Why do you need accommodations now? Like, I understand that perspective, but, like, I wasn't okay. I wasn't doing it well. Like, I was doing it well at work, but then at home, I was going how I couldn't function. Do you know what I mean? So it's like I was never okay. I was just trying to stay afloat, I guess. And then once you realize, like, you're struggling a lot harder, I don't know, it got to a point where I just couldn't handle that anymore. And so I asked for accommodations, and my boss, like, did her best and was able to kind of give me less of a workload than everybody else, which, again, there was some guilt in asking for accommodations, even though, like, disabilities are disabling. But I think that there was some guilt there of like, well, why can't I keep up with everybody else? Why is everybody else able to do all this? Why is everybody able to handle all this stuff that I can't seem to handle? And so I had maybe like half the workload of everybody else. And that was a really great balance because I noticed that over time, if I had like a slow pace, like one thing at a time job that was not overstimulating, it seemed like, especially when I could work from home at my own pace, it seemed like I had more capacity to work under certain conditions, if that makes sense. And so that was a really great setup for a few months. Because then they hired some higher up manager that saw how little I was doing, and so they eliminated my position with no notice. It was actually the same day that I applied for my LPC, like my license to practice independently. So that same day that I applied, the boss came in and told me that this higher up effectively eliminated my job as of today. I didn't have hours next week or in the foreseeable future because I wasn't hitting productivity. They didn't see a need for my job, which, like, again, as an autistic person, was really disheartening because it felt like, well, where is my place in the world with working? Because this is just so hard for me and it doesn't seem like anybody cares or understands. So I knew that my goal in the long term was to have my own practice. And so since I applied for my LPC that day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just work on my own practice. Like, while it takes a few months to get me fully licensed, I'm going to work on my practice every day. And so once I am fully licensed, I'm going to open up and just do my own thing. And so that's where my business started. It was July 1st of 2024. I got let go sometime mid-March of 2024. Not completely let go, more of like laid off. Like, I still had a job, but it was more of PRN coverage, which was like 100% productivity when I worked, which was not sustainable for me. I applied for my LPC in March. July 1st, I opened my business, got my LLC, got my malpractice insurance, all of that, and then started seeing clients a few months later. And what I realized was while I still do struggle with working to an extent, it's gotten a lot better since having my own business because I'm able to give myself all the accommodations that I need. So at this point, what works for me is working from home, having my own flexible schedule. So that way I'm working around my life. I'm not missing anything like with my kids. It's not so rigid, I guess you could say. I work from a quiet area in my house. That's where I see patients. I can take breaks after every session. Like I'll work for an hour, take a little bit of a break, work another hour, see another patient, take another break. I can really pace myself and I feel like it's going a lot better for me. And then plus two, at all the other jobs that I've had in the field, you're kind of expected to take whoever client wise. And that's not as ethical as I would like. But that's the expectation when you work for somebody else, that you just take anybody that comes in. If you aren't if you don't understand how to treat that patient, it's on you to learn, to get trainings, to essentially get outside your comfort zone. And I'm like, if I'm a client looking for services, I want somebody who actually specializes in what I'm going through. I don't want just a generalist, I want a specialist. And so I took that with me into my own practice. I have a very narrow niche. And so the days that I do work, they're very similar back to back to back sessions, which is great for my brain because I'm working with people just like me. Usually, like late diagnosed ADHDers, AuDHDers work really well together. Working still does take a lot out of me, but not nearly as much as any other jobs that I've had in the past. I think because I'm able to give myself the accommodations that I need at this point and not have to beg for them like at other jobs. But if you're like me and you've struggled with working forever and you blame yourself or look at it as like a character defect, it's not you. Disabilities are disabling, and it's a really hard thing to deal with. It's a really hard thing. I see you, I hear you. And again, if you're one of those people who like attributes this to being lazy or unmotivated or not trying hard enough, this is not the video for you. Please do not comment negative things about this. We need this to be a supportive environment and to be able to talk about these things so that way you feel less alone. Because I know how much shame and guilt and frustration and all of that comes up whenever you're dealing with something like this. So I'd love to hear your experience about this. If you've gone through this too, where you struggle with working, you're not alone. And I do talk a little bit about this on my Instagram and TikTok too. So you can follow me there. Here's my username.